Yes, indeed. Today is Groundhog's Day. And this is when we find out whether we're going to have an early spring or not from Puxatawny Phil, the groundhog who makes this prediction on Gobbler's Knob in Puxatawny, Pennsylvania. I watched the live feed this morning. I don't know if anybody else did. It's 7 a.m. And I'm afraid to say that he did indeed see his shadow. That predicts 6 more weeks, theoretically, of winter. But groundhogs are not the only animals thought to be talented in the weather forecasting department. Evidently, the Germans have Dachstag Day on February 2nd, today, where they watch for a badger to see his shadow. Serbians observe bear behavior, and the Irish like to watch their hedgehogs for St. Bridget's Day for weather predictions. Well, so question is, how accurate has Phil been? I'm happy to say not very. Since he started his predictions in 1887, he's doing worse than chance, especially lately. So you might do better to believe if he sees his shadow, will have an early spring. Climate change might be tipping the scales a little bit. Well, what interests me this morning about these traditions is the expectation. The tradition says seeing one's shadow is a predictor of a negative outcome. To be afraid of one's shadow can describe a person who is timid, nervous, or fearful of what might seem insignificant to the external observer. Afraid of, say, being in crowds in Times Square or maybe Rockefeller Center during the Christmas crush to see that decorated tree, or adults who haven't outgrown their childhood fear of their unlit bedroom at night, or maybe fear of being lost on Fifth Avenue, or maybe fears of dogs or snakes or bears, or maybe a spider web being around the bend in a nature trail. Or perhaps something more deeply psychological, like the fear of making a big decision or a purchase, or doing something wrong in the workplace that might threaten one's job, or working with a new technology that seems intimidating. Or perhaps one of the scarier scenarios, fear of the unknown, that prevents people, especially creatives, from taking a risk and starting a new project that might expose them to failure. Jung described being afraid of one's shadow as a potentially limiting reaction to confronting aspects of one's personality that live in the unconscious. Encountering those aspects of the self can produce feelings of disgust, remorse, or guilt. They can be part of the personality that is repressed or rejected. An unwillingness to face those fears can cause one to limit oneself or not strive to live up to one's potential. And that resistance to self-examination can cause those inner limitations to be projected outward to others. A way to explore being afraid of one's shadow is by examining a highly refined and edited story from the Hebrew portion of the Bible known as the Torah. Before these stories were written down, they were told and retold until they were honed to their essence, rich with meaning about the human condition. I will not be doing a historical critical analysis, nor will I be asking whether these stories actually happened or not, and I will not be doing an extensive Talmudic rabbinical analysis either. I will treat the references to God as not as revealed truth, but as a character in the story that supports the transmission of meaning. For the purposes of seeing the human condition reflected back to us, these stories are precious cultural artifacts. Using the story of Jacob found in the book of Genesis, I will explore Jacob's shadow problems. My method will be to examine how Jacob does or does not deal with his shadow. And again, let me preface my remarks by saying that this story has been analyzed thousands of times by thousands of different people in different ways, and mine will be far from the authoritative analysis of it that would take many hours and probably several books to do. Hopefully, I can shake a little bit of inspiration out of this story for your benefit this morning. Jacob, son of Isaac, had an older brother whose name was Esau. Isaac was old and decided that it was time to pass his lineage on to Esau, who was the elder son. And that makes complete sense in this cultural context because the eldest son should get his father's blessing. Isaac sent Esau off to hunt some game to prepare his favorite dish. After eating with him, he planned to bless him. His wife, Rebekah, believed this blessing shouldn't go to Esau, but it should go to Jacob. She instructed Jacob to prepare that requested meal for his father and steal the blessing. Jacob objected. Not necessarily that this was wrong, but that his father would know he was being deceived, because Jacob was a smooth-skinned man and Esau was a hairy-skinned man. Rebekah offered Jacob Esau's coat so that he would smell like Esau, and some fur to put on his back of his hand to pretend to be Esau. The ruse worked, only to be exposed once Esau returned and made his dish. Sadly, Isaac only had one blessing, which enraged Esau. He decided he wanted to kill Jacob. Rebekah sent Jacob off to escape to live with her brother Laban. Unbeknownst to Isaac, God had decided smooth Jacob should be the chosen one rather than hairy Esau. I think there's a real prejudice here against hairy people. But Jacob loved his son Esau, who was more of a warrior type, manly kind of man, whereas Jacob was hanging out with his mother, who told him what to do. Not the usual heroic setup for someone who will be the seed of the Jewish people. And rather than being courageous and having a fight to the death with Esau to earn his father's blessing he had stolen, Jacob cowardly ran away to hide out with his mother's brother. Laban, their brother, took Jacob in. Laban's daughter Rachel lit a fire of desire in Jacob's breast, and he wanted her for his wife. Laban was agreeable to the proposal if Jacob tended his herds for 7 years. On the night of the end of the seventh year, Laban slipped Rachel's older daughter, his older daughter, Leah, who had bad eyesight, in the place of Rachel, into Jacob's bed. Jacob objected, and Laban said that he would have to have the older daughter because that was their custom. He could have Rachel as his second wife, however, if he worked another 7 years, which he did. Add to that insult more work requirements to earn more herds, and then stealing some of his herd. Laban was anything but a gracious and accommodating uncle. Jacob had 4 sons with Leah, which upset Rachel, who was barren, so she demanded Jacob sleep with her servants so that she could have children. Leah and Rachel's baby rivalry ended up with 11 sons and a daughter. Jacob, the long-suffering husband, doesn't come across as a man in command of his destiny, to be the father of the Jewish people. He shows little initiative besides doing what his uncle and his wives tell him to do. His decision to return home after his father's household comes after he's afraid that Laban's going to take his herds away from him. What he does seem to be able to do is grow his family and his herds. He is very reproductively fertile. So this is the backstory. I want to make sure you get the backstory that brings us to the dramatic wrestling match with the man-angel creature. Jacob is all alone, having sent everyone ahead. There isn't anyone to tell him what to do. Esau is coming to meet him and may want to kill him. He can't go back to Laban's household and endure more abuse. He is in one of those dark night of the soul moments, personified in the wrestling match. In Joseph Campbell's Hero's Journey, the shadow archetype represents the repressed aspects of the hero, often manifesting as an antagonist or an external adversary. It embodies the hero's internal struggle, suppressed fears, or undesirable traits, serving as a mirror of what heroes might become if they fail to grow. Confronting the shadow is crucial for the hero's transformation, symbolizing that inner battle. Jacob's outer wrestling is that symbolic representation of those inner struggles. He betrayed his older brother at the provocation of his mother. Rather than face the consequences of his deception of his father, he runs away to his mother's brother's household. In that household, his passion for Rachel causes him to sacrifice 14 years of his life to Laban. He is a slave to his passion. When he is deceived by Laban, who substitutes Leah for Rachel, he accepts the deception without a fight. Perhaps he has a guilty conscience for his own deception of his father. He sleeps with whomever his wives tell him to sleep with to crank out babies. Jacob has no agency in this story. Nothing comes from within him. He just does what he is told. Only when that man/angel demands to be let go does he finally hold on and say no. I wonder if having his hip dislocated, Having a physical wound allowed that inner psychological wounds finally to present themselves. In the hero's journey, being wounded symbolizes a pivotal moment of transformation and growth. This sacred wound often represents vulnerability, loss, and trauma that forces the hero to confront their limitations, undergo profound self-discovery. The wound reshapes the hero's internal and external landscapes, compelling them to adapt, gain wisdom, and develop resilience. Jacob limps away to face his brother Esau, who is overjoyed, thankfully, to reestablish their relationship and offers his forgiveness. So finally, the family is reunited, and Jacob is now ready for his role as the progenitor of the Jewish people. Jacob's story of transformation highlights February's value of transformation from the new statement of our values with love at the center. Today I've been discussing the transformation of the shadowy inner barriers to growth and development. Next Sunday I'll be highlighting the transforming power of love. The theme for our third Sunday will be the transforming power of communal action in partnership with others who share our values. Whether through overcoming inner barriers, opening to the inner power of love, or engaging in communal action for the good of the whole, we can be transformed again and again. As Zach would say, this is the goal of lifespan growth and development. We are never done changing, growing, developing until we take our last breath. So if you have recognized anything about your own shadow today, I encourage you to not hide out for the next 6 weeks. Find ways to enjoy winter that fit with your abilities and your limitations. There is beauty to appreciate in every season. Or on the inner level, begin to find ways to open up to the repressed and rejected parts of yourself and explore how to transform and heal them. And may you find ways to change, grow, and develop that don't require hip displacement. So be it.